My granddaughter blocked me on every platform the week she graduated. Margaret Hayes, retired professor and grandmother for 22 years, didn't chase after her. Emily, the little girl who once begged me to attend every school play, posed with her friends like I'd never existed. By morning, the university's alumni donor list would be unveiled, with one name carved in gold above the library doors. I'd been both teacher and grandmother. Now I was the woman who funded the building she'd study in, and when she saw Margaret Hayes shining on the wall, Emily finally knew whose legacy she'd stepped past. I'm curious, where in the world are you joining us from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and make sure you're subscribed for all the latest updates. I tapped her name, her profile vanished. Emma Whitman balanced her phone in one hand, glasses slipping down her nose as she scrolled to Ava's contact. She'd been meaning to send the graduation congratulations all morning. Something warm, simple. Her thumbs typed the short message. Proud of you, sweetheart. Call me when you can. She tapped send. The screen flashed red, message not delivered. Frowning, she tried again, then moved to her social media app. Ava's profile, usually full of cap and gown photos or candid smiles, was now nothing but a blank silhouette, and the words user not found. The absence felt louder than any picture could. She stared at the screen, the hum of her refrigerator suddenly the only sound in the kitchen. Without overthinking, she scrolled to Eleanor, Ava's mom, her own daughter, and tapped out a quick text. Is Ava okay? My messages won't go through. The reply came fast, almost too fast. She's done with you. Emma's breath caught. No greeting, no explanation, just the flat statement that landed like a door slamming in her face. She lowered the phone to the table, pressing her palms against the wood. The late morning sun angled through the blinds, striping the floor in warm light, but it felt distant, irrelevant. For a long moment she didn't move. The back door creaked, and a familiar voice called softly. You in here? Lorraine stepped inside, scarf wrapped snug against the spring wind. She took one look at Emma's expression and closed the door gently behind her. What's wrong? Emma swallowed. I tried to text Ava. She blocked me. On everything. Lorraine's brows knit. Blocked? That's intentional. I don't understand, Emma murmured. I just wanted to tell her I was proud. I didn't do anything today. Her voice caught. Maybe I didn't do enough before. Lorraine took the chair opposite her. So what now? Have you given up or just paused? The question hung there. Paused. The word had an opening in it, a space where breath could still move. I need to make her see me, Emma said finally, the words quiet but anchored. Lorraine gave a small nod as though marking the statement as a plan. The sharp chime of an email notification cut through the moment. Emma glanced toward the laptop sitting open on the counter. She pushed back her chair and crossed the kitchen, expecting a bill or junk ad. But the subject line made her stop. Your name has been added to the alumni donor wall. She clicked it open. The message was brief, formal, and entirely unexpected. We are pleased to inform you that your name has now been engraved on the alumni donor wall in recognition of your continued generosity. Below, a photo of a gleaming brass plaque caught the light, her name etched beneath a bold 100. Emma read it twice, her heart beat slow but heavy. Lorraine's voice floated from behind her. What is it? Emma kept her eyes on the image of the wall. For years she'd given quietly to the university, never for recognition, never for but now, she wondered if this visibility could cross a distance that words couldn't. She closed the laptop gently, the echo of the email still ringing in her thoughts. An email alert lingered in her mind, the words impossible to shake. Your name has been added to the alumni donor wall. $100,000 beneath my name. But was it enough to matter? Emma stared at the email again the next morning, the number still startling in its boldness. $100,000. The figure looked less like a sum and more like a spotlight. Under it, her name in crisp engraving. For years she'd written the checks in private, letting them slip into the university's ledger without fanfare, without ceremony. She'd never wanted her giving to be an announcement. The cursor blinked in the reply box, though she didn't type a word. A knock on the side door broke her focus. Lorraine stepped in, brushing off the early spring chill. You didn't answer my calls. You okay? Emma turned the laptop toward her. Lorraine leaned in, squinting at the photograph in the email. Emma, that's you. That's your name. She stopped herself, eyes flicking back to Emma's face. Big Emma finished for her. Lorraine nodded slowly. It's impressive and generous, but are you ready for people to see it? Emma's lips pressed into a thin line. It was never about that. I gave because, she cut herself short. The truth was, she'd always felt giving was safer than asking for anything in return. She stood, crossing to the window. The sunlight felt sharper today. Would Ava see? Would her name on that wall register as pride, or as some grand gesture meant to prove a point? Her phone buzzed on the counter. A text from an unfamiliar number. Your generosity changes lives. Margaret, David's wife. Emma's chest tightened at the name. David, her old mentor, had been the one to first nudge her toward philanthropy decades ago. His wife had apparently seen the wall already. Word was traveling faster than she expected. Lorraine poured herself coffee, her voice careful. If this was supposed to be anonymous, it isn't anymore. Emma closed the laptop. I need to see it for myself. The drive to campus was longer than she remembered. Spring buds were just beginning to tip the trees, the air holding that restless mix of chill and warmth. She parked near the main quad, her steps measured as she approached the alumni center. Inside, the donor wall spanned an entire length of polished wood-paneled hallway. The brass plaques gleamed under recessed lighting, each name catching the glow. She walked slowly, scanning the rows until she found it, her own name, the letters neat and unyielding. Emma reached out, her fingertips brushing the cool metal. Beneath her name, the engraved line. It felt strange, seeing her life's quiet habit of giving condensed into a single inscription. People passed behind her, their shoes whispering on the marble floor, but she stayed still, reading it over and over as if it might change. Somewhere between pride and uncertainty, a thought crept in. Will she even look? If Ava never walked this hallway, the wall could shout her name forever and it would still be silence. Her phone buzzed again. She almost ignored it, expecting another congratulatory text from someone she hadn't spoken to in years. But when she glanced down, her breath caught Ava's name. The message was short, cautious. Did you give money to my school? Emma froze in the middle of the hallway, the plaque still at her shoulder, her heart thudding in her ears. She stared at the glowing screen, Ava's words sharp and sudden as a knock on a locked door. Her message felt cautious, curious, maybe regret. Emma read the text again, the words stark on the small screen. Did you give money to my school? Ava's name glowed at the top like a sudden beam of light in a shuttered room. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. She could write a dozen explanations, tell the whole story of why she'd given, when she'd started, how she'd never meant for it to be public. But she typed only yes. I wanted to support your dreams. The dots of Ava's reply began to pulse, then stopped, started again. Stop. Emma held her breath, every second stretched. Finally, can we meet? Then almost immediately after, I don't know if it's a good idea. She stared at those two lines, hope and hesitation in equal measure. She could almost hear Ava's voice in them, the one she remembered from years ago, low and careful when she was nervous. Lorraine's knock came lightly on the kitchen door. She stepped in without waiting, as always. I was on my way past and thought. She stopped at the sight of Emma's expression. It's her, isn't it? Emma nodded, turning the phone so Lorraine could see. Meet her. Lorraine said at once, but maybe, bring Eleanor. Neutral ground, neutral faces. The suggestion landed heavy. Eleanor's presence could make Ava feel safer, or it could tip the balance toward old family tensions. Still, Emma knew Lorraine wasn't wrong. That night, Emma sat in her den with the lights low, thinking about the years she and Ava had been in each other's lives without truly seeing each other. There had been good hugs, strong, real, the kind you remembered for days, but also stretches of silence that thickened into walls. She remembered Ava's 10th birthday, the way she'd leaned into Emma's shoulder during the cake song. She remembered last Thanksgiving, when Ava had barely looked her way. She tapped out a new message. There's a cafe near campus. Quiet. Neutral, would you be willing to meet there? The reply didn't come that night. In the morning, her phone buzzed. Okay, tomorrow, 2 p.m. Emma stared at the words, her heart a restless drum. She texted Lorraine, meeting set. Within minutes, Lorraine was at her table with coffee and a notepad. You need to think about tone. No grand gestures, no guilt trips, just honesty. Emma scribbled small reminders in her own handwriting. Listen more than speak. Don't defend. Explain. Grace first. The next day, she dressed in soft colors. Nothing loud. Nothing formal. As she drove toward the cafe, the streets around the university were alive with spring energy. Students laughing on the sidewalks, arms heavy with textbooks. The cafe was tucked on a corner just off the main strip, its windows framed with ivy. Inside, low music hummed under the scent of coffee and warm bread. She chose a table near the back, where the light was gentle and the sound of the espresso machine made a steady back. Her hands wrapped around the mug in front of her. Questions swirled. Would Ava see the donation as an act of grace or as a calculated move? Would she hear the truth if Emma spoke it plainly, or would it sound like one more attempt to fix something with money? She rehearsed the first few lines in her head. I'm glad you came. I missed you. Simple, true, without weight she didn't need to place on Ava's shoulders. The minutes inched by. Each time the door opened, Emma's gaze lifted. A group of students, a couple in running gear. Then, Ava, her granddaughter, stood just inside the entrance, framed by sunlight from the street behind her. She scanned the cafe, found Emma and froze in the doorway. Her hand tightened around the strap of her bag. Something unreadable crossed her face, uncertainty. Maybe nerves, maybe a flicker of old hurt. Emma didn't move. Across the room, Ava stayed at the threshold, not yet stepping forward. Her eyes flickered disbelief, and I closed the distance. Emma pushed her chair back, the scrape of wood on tile breaking the heavy pause between them. Ava was still framed in the doorway, the light behind her making her look half-shadowed. Emma crossed the room slowly, careful not to spook. Up close, she could see the fine tremor in Ava's hands as she adjusted the strap of her bag. I'm glad you came, Emma said softly. Please, sit. Ava followed her to the table, lowering herself into the chair like she wasn't sure if she'd stay. The air between them felt crowded with unspoken things. Emma folded her hands around her mug. I missed you, she began. The wall was a place to be seen. She let the words land without dressing them up, without trying to make them sound better than they were. Ava's gaze stayed on the table. I never asked for money, she said, her voice catching. Just honesty. The words hit Emma harder than she expected. She opened her mouth to explain, but stopped. This wasn't the moment to defend herself. She took a slow breath. Then I owe you that. All of it. For a while only the hum of the cafe and the hiss of the espresso machine filled the silence. Ava lifted her eyes and there was something raw there. Do you know what it felt like seeing your name in gold letters? Everyone talking about it. It wasn't about me anymore. It was about you giving. Emma nodded once. And in doing that, I took space away from you. She reached for her coffee more to keep her hands busy than to drink. I'm sorry, for not being enough in the ways that mattered, for letting pride replace presence. Ava leaned back in her chair, still guarded but less rigid. I wanted you to care about me, not the institution, but, she hesitated, biting the inside of her cheek. Something happened. Emma waited. My scholarship, Ava said quietly. It got pulled last year. No one told me why, just budget reallocation. I was going to have to drop my last semester. Emma's fingers stilled on the rim of her mug. They said it was reinstated after a major gift came in, from a donor they wouldn't name. Ava's eyes locked on hers. Now I put it together later. Emma felt the air shift, a quiet click of truth falling into place. She had written the check in winter, never knowing whose specific need it would serve. But now, you were the reason I graduated, Ava said, her voice barely above a whisper. Emma swallowed, her throat tight. I didn't know it would come to you, but if I'd known. Ava looked down at her coffee, fingers tracing the edge of the saucer. So you didn't do it for recognition? No, Emma said firmly. I did it because I believe in you, always. They sipped their coffee in silence after that. The tension didn't vanish, but it softened around the edges, like fabric worn enough to bend. Outside, the late afternoon light slid across the cafe floor, catching in Ava's hair as she leaned forward slightly. Her voice dropped, almost tentative. "You did it because of me. If my gifts brought her opportunity, why did she turn away?" Emma sat at her kitchen table long after the meeting, the steam from her coffee gone cold. Ava's words kept looping in her head, the gratitude, yes, but also the years of silence between them. She'd given to that school for over a decade, quietly, consistently, and yet Ava had never known. She reached for the leather-bound ledger she kept tucked in a drawer. Not a formal account, just her own record. 10 years of donations, starting small, each line in her neat cursive. Most marked anonymous. Lorraine dropped by mid-morning, grocery bag in hand. She set a loaf of fresh bread on the counter and studied Emma's expression. Thinking too much? Emma didn't look up. If my giving helped her finish school, why did she still shut me out? Lorraine pulled out a chair and sat across from her. Because generosity isn't a love language, unless people know it's meant for them. Emma's pen hovered over a date in 2017. I thought doing it quietly was dignified. It's dignified, Lorraine agreed, but it's also invisible. Emma flipped through the pages. Spring 2015, summer 2018, autumn 2021. Each check written, each receipt filed away. Always marked no public recognition. Her phone buzzed. "Ava, can I read your note left at the scholarship fund?" Emma she remembered writing it, 2 years ago, when the development office asked if she'd like to attach a message. She'd written it in a rush of feeling, then forgotten it. She typed back. "Are you sure you want to?" "Yes." Emma hesitated, fingers lingering above the screen. The note was personal, bare in a way she rarely let anyone see, but Ava was asking. That had to count for something. She opened the scanned copy on her computer, reading it again. "To the student who receives this, I believe in you even when you think no one is watching. I believe in your ability to finish what you start, and even if you stop calling, I'll still be proud of you. EW." Her chest tightened. She attached the file and hit send before she could second-guess it. Minutes later, a new message. I read it. She waited, pulse thudding. "I didn't know you felt that way when I pulled away." Emma typed. "It was true then. It's true now." There was no reply after that. Instead, Emma found herself scrolling social media later that afternoon, and stopping cold on a post from Ava. A graduation photo. Ava in her gown, sunlight in her hair, and beneath it, the caption, "She's not just a donor, she's my grandmother." Emma's throat caught. Comments were already stacking up. Heart emojis, congratulations, and a few, "I didn't know you were related. That's incredible." She read the caption again. Not was. Is, present tense. She leaned back in her chair, the faintest smile tugging at her mouth. It wasn't reconciliation. Not fully, but it was a door, cracked open. Her phone chimed with a new notification, a tag in a public post she didn't recognize. She tapped it open, and a photo filled the screen. Someone had taken it at the cafe yesterday. Emma and Ava mid-conversation. The caption, "Look who's here," the woman behind the gift. Her name lit up campus. It made people reconsider everything. By morning, the tagged cafe photo had spread beyond Ava's social circle. A student-run blog reposted it with a headline, "Alumni donor behind $100 K gift spotted on campus." Within hours, the local paper followed with their own story, complete with a cropped image of the brass plaque. Emma's laptop screen glowed with the article. Her name sat there in bold type, side by side with the donation figure. It felt strange seeing it out in the open, not tucked into a ledger, not buried in the quiet anonymity she'd always preferred. Her phone pinged again and again. Links to the piece, comments from acquaintances she hadn't spoken to in years. A few warm, "Proud of you, Emma," others cutting, "Where was Grandma when Ava needed her?" She clicked through one of the public threads, dozens of strangers dissecting her motives, like a case study. Maybe she's making up for something. Looks like guilt money. The words stung, not because they were all wrong, but because they didn't know the truth. They couldn't. A text from Ava broke through the noise. "They don't know our history." Emma stared at the message for a long moment before typing back, "No, they don't." She didn't hit send. She wasn't sure if this was the right moment to engage, or if silence would serve them better. The back door opened, and Lorraine stepped in, 2 grocery bags dangling from her arm. She clocked Emma's expression instantly. "So you're famous now." Emma gave a small, humorless laugh. "Infamous? Maybe." Lorraine set the bags down and joined her at the table, eyes scanning the headlines. "They'll write whatever gets clicks. You can't control that." "I can correct it," Emma murmured. "Maybe," Lorraine said, her tone steady. "But speak your truth, don't drown in reaction. You explain your reason because it's worth hearing, not because you owe it." Emma closed the laptop halfway, staring at the muted reflection of herself in the screen. She thought about the years of checks, the deliberate anonymity, the choice to let the school decide where the money went. She thought about Ava's voice in the cafe, asking if she'd done it for her. On the counter sat a half-empty legal pad. She pulled it closer and began to write. "I've spent much of my life giving quietly. Not because I had nothing to say, but because I believed the work mattered more than my name. This year, my gift happened to help someone I love finish what she started. That's all the story needs to be. I gave out of pride in her, not shame for myself." She read it over, trimming the edges so it felt less like a speech and more like a truth she could stand beside. No excuses, no grand declarations. She opened her social media app, fingers poised over the keyboard. The feed was still crowded with speculation. She pasted the statement into a new post, rereading it one last time. Lorraine's voice echoed in her mind. Honesty over performance. Emma deleted one adjective, softened a phrase. When it felt right, true without being defensive, she hit post. The spinning circle on the screen seemed to take longer than usual, like the internet itself was holding its breath. The little confirmation banner appeared. Her words were now out there. Beyond recall. Almost immediately, a new notification popped up at the top of her screen. New message from Ava. Emma publishes and sees a new direct message from Ava. It started with "I'm sorry," then unraveled years. The message from Ava sat unopened in Emma's inbox for a long minute. She could see only the first 3 words in the preview. "I'm sorry I..." Her thumb hovered over the screen. She finally tapped. "I'm sorry I blocked you. I didn't know you cared." Emma's breath caught, the phone suddenly heavier in her hand. She leaned back into the chair, reading the line again. The edges of the day seemed to soften around her. More lines followed. "The scholarship saved my final year. I was ready to quit. I didn't even tell Mom at first because I thought she'd say it was my fault. Then I saw your name on that wall, and I didn't know how to process it." Emma's eyes blurred. She blinked hard and kept reading. "My resentment was louder than my gratitude. I think I convinced myself you didn't care so it would hurt less if you stayed away." Emma rested the phone in her lap for a moment. She could almost hear Ava's voice, older than the girl she remembered, but carrying the same cautious rhythm when emotions ran high. She typed slowly, "I just wanted you to feel seen." The reply came within minutes. "Can we meet again in true granddaughter grandma mode? No awkward speeches, no audience, just us." Emma smiled through the sting in her eyes. "Yes." She paused, then added, "Any time." For a while neither of them wrote anything more. The silence between messages felt different now, less like a wall, more like a shared breath. She set the phone down, wiping her cheeks with the heel of her hand. Lorraine, who had been rinsing mugs at the sink, turned. "Good news?" Emma's voice was quiet but sure. "We're meeting again." "When?" Emma picked up the phone again and typed, "When works for you?" Ava's answer came quickly. "This weekend, Saturday. Lunch at your place?" Emma's throat tightened. Her house had been missing that younger laughter for too long. "Perfect," she wrote back. They agreed on a time and left it at that. No long planning, no overthinking. The simplicity of it felt right. Later that evening, Emma wandered through the living room, straightening the family photos on the shelves. Her fingers lingered on a picture from years ago, Ava gap-toothed and beaming, sitting on Emma's lap. It struck her how much had happened between that moment and now, how much could still be rebuilt if they let it. She made a small list on the counter for Saturday: fresh flowers, the roast Ava used to love, maybe that pie recipe she always asked for. but she didn't write more than a few items. This wasn't about putting on a show, this was about presence. Night fell quietly over the house. Emma brewed herself a cup of tea and settled by the window, the glow from her phone lighting her lap. She read Ava's messages again, not to analyze them, but to feel the shift they carry. Just before bed, her email app pinged. She almost ignored it, assuming it was a late-night newsletter or a sale flyer. But the subject line stopped her. Invitation Annual Donor Recognition Ceremony. It was from the university president's office. That night, Emma finds another email from the university president, invitation to donor ceremony. They wanted to honor the donor, but I only cared about honoring her. Emma sat at her desk in the soft spill of morning light, the unopened email from the university president still sitting at the top of her inbox. She clicked it, scanning the formal language until her eyes caught on the central line. We are pleased to invite you to the annual Donor Recognition Gala, to be held next month. Attached was a PDF thick ivory lettering over a gold crest, the kind of stationery that tried to feel weighty through a screen. She printed it, the paper warm in her hands, and slid a knife carefully along the envelope seam. Lorraine appeared mid-morning, tapping on the door frame. Well, what's the verdict? Emma handed her the printed invitation. Lorraine read it, her eyebrows lifting. You have to go. As her family. Emma exhaled slowly. I'm not sure what I'd be walking into. Lorraine's tone softened. Then walk in with her. If this night is going to put your name in lights, make sure she's standing in that light with you. The idea sat between them for a beat. Emma nodded. All right, I'll go. She ordered a dress that afternoon. Navy silk, simple lines, no glitter or sequin. Not a statement piece, just something that would feel like herself. It arrived a week later in a flat box, folded with tissue. She hung it on the closet door and stepped back, studying it with the critical eye she usually reserved for company china. 2 days before the gala, Ava came by. The knock on the front door had a rhythm Emma recognized instantly. She opened it to see her granddaughter holding a paper coffee cup in one hand, her coat collar turned up against the wind. I thought you might need a second opinion, Ava said, stepping inside. Emma led her to the bedroom, where the dress hung waiting. Ava tilted her head, considering. Classic, it suits you. Emma smiled faintly. Not too much, not enough to scare me. Ava teased, and they both laughed, small but real. They moved through the house together. Little moments of reconnection strung between them. Ava asked where the good scissors were, found the fabric steamer and fussed over a crease on the hem. Emma fetched a box of pins from her sewing kit, just in case. They didn't talk about the past that afternoon. No heavy revisiting, no questions about years gone wrong. Instead, they drifted toward the kitchen where Ava sat at the table, hands curled around another mug of coffee. So, Emma asked, what's next for you? Ava's gaze went distant for a second, then settled back. Grad school, maybe, or a year off to work. I'm not sure yet. Both are fine answers, Emma said. They traded ideas in low, unhurried voice. Emma found herself nodding along, not to give approval but to show she was listening. Ava caught the look once, and gave a small, grateful smile before glancing back at her cup. The evening of the gala arrived crisp and clear, the sky a deep winter blue. Emma dressed slowly, fastening a single string of pearls at her throat. Ava arrived in a soft green dress, her hair swept back, eyes bright with a mix of nerves and curiosity. The university's grand hall was already alive when they stepped inside, golden light pooling under high ceilings, the sound of glasses clinking, strings of conversation weaving in and out. Emma gave her name at the check-in table. A hostess in black silk smiled, checked her list, and motioned them toward the main floor. They walked between round tables draped in white linen. Ava glanced around, taking in the floral centerpieces and the glint of silverware. They were nearly to the front when an usher stopped them, gesturing toward a small riser in the center of the room. Mrs. Whitman, this is your table, he said, pulling out a chair. At the gala they seat Emma center stage. Ava realizes where she is. The MC called my name, and she gasped. The lights in the grand hall dimmed slightly, leaving the stage in a warm spotlight. Conversations faded to a murmur as the MC, a tall man in a black tuxedo, stepped up to the microphone. "We gather tonight to honor those whose generosity shapes the future of our students," he began, his voice smooth and practiced. His words washed over Emma in a blur until she caught the shift in tone. "And now," the MC continued, "please join me in recognizing our top benefactor, Emma Whitman." A ripple moved through the audience. Cameras swiveled. The stage lights seemed to find her where she sat. Center stage. The white tablecloth in front of her suddenly too bright. Beside her, Ava froze. Her eyes widened, and a soft gasp escaped before she could stop it. The sound felt louder than the applause that followed. Emma kept her chin lifted, a small controlled smile forming. Her eyes prickled, but she blinked back the heat. Dignity mattered here. Not because of the cameras, but because she wanted Ava to see it. The applause swelled, cameras snapped, their flashes catching Ava's stunned expression as she raised a hand to her mouth. Emma reached for her water glass, her hand steady despite the thrum in her chest. She didn't look at the cameras, she looked at Ava. Something shifted in her granddaughter's face, surprise giving way to something warmer, softer. Without a word, Ava rose from her chair and crossed to the empty seat beside Emma. Her hand found Emma's sleeve, resting there in quiet solidarity. The contact was light, but it felt like an anchor. Lorraine stood near the edge of the stage, just beyond the curtain. She caught Emma's eye and smiled, relief flickering across her face like a private signal. "You're not alone up here," the MC's voice continued, reciting Emma's years of contributions, her impact on scholarship programs, her quiet consistency. Each word felt heavier than it sounded, as if the whole room was listening in a new way. Emma's mind wandered briefly, back to the first check she'd written, the years of doing it without telling anyone, the instinct to stay invisible. Yet here she was, name in lights, Ava beside her. The gala flowed on, speeches, clinking glasses, polite laughter. But for Emma, the rest of the evening felt different. She wasn't the only focus now. After dessert, the MC returned to the microphone. "And finally," he said, "we present this year's inspirational honoree, a student whose perseverance and achievements embody the spirit of this institution." Emma glanced toward the wings, expecting another graduate to appear. Instead, the screen above the stage, lit with a name in elegant gold script, Ava Whitman. A collective murmur swept the room. Ava stiffened, her eyes darting to Emma, then back to the stage. The MC went on, telling the story of a student who had faced unexpected setbacks, fought to finish her degree, and inspired her peers along the way. Emma's chest tightened. She hadn't known. The applause this time was thunderous. Cameras turned to capture Ava, the student honoree, seated beside the top donor. Two names, two generations, one story unfolding in public view. Ava leaned toward her, her voice low so only Emma could hear. "They put my name too, now we share this." Two names, side by side, her and mine, finally equal. The projection above the stage shimmered, two names engraved in gold script, standing side by side. Emma Whitman, Ava Whitman. The letters glowed against the deep blue backdrop, equal in size, equal in presence. For the first time, it wasn't just Emma's name in the light. The ceremony continued, the audience leaning forward, phones raised, flashes breaking like tiny bursts of lightning. They were photographed together, their names glowing above them in the background. Emma felt Ava's shoulder brush against hers in the frame, the warmth of that small contact grounding her in a way the applause never could. As the MC moved to the next honoree, Ava turned toward her. Without a word, she stepped in and wrapped her arms around Emma. Firm, steady, not a polite stage hug, but something layered, something real. It was public and private reconciliation combined. Emma closed her eyes for a heartbeat, letting herself absorb it. From somewhere off to the side, guests murmured. A daughter and grandmother, reunited, one voice said, carrying just far enough for Emma to hear. The words lodged in her chest like a gift she hadn't expected. When they stepped off stage, Lorraine was waiting in the quiet backstage corner, a champagne flute in hand. She lifted it in a small, deliberate gesture. To second chances, Emma's throat tightened. She leaned slightly toward Ava, her voice barely more than a whisper. I gave money, but I wanted us back. The truth in the words felt heavier than the pearls at her neck. Ava's reply came without hesitation. You gave me my future, and now my family. She said it with a clarity that made Emma's breath catch, as though the sentence itself closed a chapter between them. They lingered long after the crowd began to thin, staying in the warm hum of the gala's final moment. The staff began to gather empty glasses and fold linen napkins, but neither made a move to leave. There was no speech to prepare, no spotlight to chase, just presence. They stayed after the ceremony. No speech, just presence. The simplicity of that choice made it feel even more significant. When they finally walked out through the tall glass doors, the night air felt cool against Emma's skin. She glanced sideways at Ava, who walked close enough that their coats brushed. The stars were faint above the glow of the city, but the quiet between them was easy. They crossed the parking lot slowly, passing clusters of guests saying their goodbyes. Lorraine waved once more before heading toward her car. Emma and Ava didn't rush. Back at Emma's house, the familiar creak of the front step greeted them. Ava gave her a quick squeeze at the door and said, I'll see you soon. There was no need for a set date. It was enough that the promise was spoken. Inside, the house felt warmer than she'd left it. Emma hung her coat, set her clutch on the table, and slipped off her shoes. She reached for the lamp in the living room, casting a softer glow across the room. On the kitchen counter, her phone buzzed once. She glanced down. One unread text from an unfamiliar number. The message was short, with no greeting, no context, just a line that seemed to tilt the room slightly under her feet. Let's talk about the other beneficiaries. Announcements spark envy, and old wounds reopen. The morning after the gala, the articles and photos were everywhere, on the university's homepage, in local news feeds, shared across Facebook by people Emma hadn't heard from in years. The image of the plaque was front and center. Emma Whitman. By mid-afternoon, her phone began to buzz with a different kind of attention. First a cousin's text, saw your name on the donor wall. That's amazing. Does that mean you're leaving something for the rest of us? Then another relative's call that she let go to voicemail. By the time she checked her messages again, the tone had shifted from curiosity to expectation. Others in the family saw the plaque and asked Grandma what about them. It wasn't the first time money had cast a shadow between kin, but it landed differently now, sharper, more direct. The next message came from Eleanor. We need to talk inheritance. Emma stared at the text, feeling its weight. She could almost hear her daughter's clipped voice behind it, the one she used when she was trying to mask anger with formality. Before she could reply, another message lit the screen. This one from Lori, her niece. Why now? Why not earlier? The words bristled, like an accusation dressed as a question. Emma set the phone down, letting the sting pass. She stayed calm, focused on healing over guilt. That had been the promise she'd made to herself after the first conversation with Ava, not to be pulled backward by old patterns, no matter who tried to tug her there. That evening Lorraine came by with a small casserole and a sharper perspective. She listened as Emma read the messages aloud, her expression somewhere between sympathy and irritation. They're trying to turn your choice into an obligation, Lorraine said. Structured boundaries, Emma. You give what counts, not guilt. Emma smiled faintly at the phrase. You make it sound simple. It is simple, Lorraine replied, but not easy. Later Ava stopped by. She'd seen the same posts, the same subtle jabs from extended family members, now sliding into her grandmother's comments section. She sat across from Emma at the kitchen table, her voice low but steady. Don't surrender to obligation, Ava said. You gave because you wanted to help, not because you owed anyone. Emma met her granddaughter's gaze and saw the quiet resolve there. For years she'd worried Ava might see her generosity as something transactional, but now Ava was defending her right to give on her own terms. Emma decided, then and there, to show them how legacy was always love, not ledger. She'd find a way to make that clear, even if it meant uncomfortable conversations. Money might buy plaques and headlines, but it wasn't the same as what she'd worked her whole life to pass on: her values, her presence, presence, her belief in the people she loved. The house was quiet when Ava left, the sound of the front door clicking shut settling into the air like a pause before the next sentence. Her phone buzzed again on the counter. Eleanor. This time it wasn't a text demanding explanation. It was a short, clipped line that still carried an Eleanor requests she join an urgent Zoom tomorrow morning. She accused me of favoritism. I spoke of intention. The next morning, Emma sat at her dining table with the laptop open, her coffee cooling beside her. The Zoom meeting link from Eleanor blinked in her inbox, and with a deep breath she clicked join. The screen filled with Eleanor's face almost instantly, jaw set, hair pulled back in a way that made her look even more severe. The tension was immediate, hanging in the space between them before a word was spoken. You always had favorites, Eleanor said without preamble, her voice sharp enough to slice through the static. Emma didn't flinch. She let the words hang for a moment before answering, her tone even. I invested in people who needed love and hope. Eleanor's eyes narrowed, but there was something else in them too, a flicker of hurt that was older than this conversation. Before either could speak again, Ava's window popped onto the screen. She'd logged in quietly, her voice calm but resolute when she spoke. It's not division, it was redemption. Eleanor blinked at the interruption, her lips pressing together as though weighing whether to argue. Ava didn't look away. From the side, Lorraine's camera came to life. She sat in her own kitchen, hair still damp from a shower, mug in hand. If I may, she said gently, I've known Emma long enough to see a pattern. Her generosity was often invisible until crisis hit, and when it did, she acted without hesitation. It's not favoritism, it's timing, and sometimes the timing is out of your control. Eleanor's shoulders sagged slightly, her gaze dropping to something off-screen. You make it sound intentional, she said, voice quieter now. It was, Emma replied. I didn't give to divide you from anyone else. I gave to bridge a gap when someone was falling. Silence settled for a moment, thick but not hostile. Eleanor lifted her eyes again, and for the first time since the call began, they shimmered faintly. Can I forgive? The question was almost to herself, but the microphone caught it all the same. Emma's voice softened. You've been forgiven. Can you join us? A pause, long enough for Emma to hear the faint sound of Eleanor's breathing through the speakers. Finally, Eleanor nodded once, a small gesture that felt larger than it looked. The call shifted then. Ava asked about her mother's work. Lorraine made a wry comment about the news coverage, and Emma let the conversation flow without pushing. They stayed on for another 15 minutes, not resolving everything, but untangling just enough to make room for the next step. When the screen finally went black and the quiet of the house returned, Emma sat still for a moment, the echo of the call lingering in her chest. The sunlight through the window landed on the corner of the table where her coffee sat cold, untouched. She reached for her phone out of habit, glancing at the notifications. One new message, from Emily. Emily wants to talk too. Emily was quiet until she wasn't. Emma sat in the living room, the faint hum of the refrigerator the only sound in the house. The late afternoon light was slanting low across the carpet when her phone buzzed again. It was Emily. Ava's teenage sister rarely texted her directly. Emma opened the message. I felt invisible too. Emma's thumb hovered over the keyboard, but before she could type, another bubble appeared. Everyone's talking about your donation, and Ava's award. No one notices me. It's like I don't exist. Emma leaned back against the couch cushions, reading the words twice. Emily had always been the quieter one, present at holidays but hanging back, more likely to slip out to her room than sit in the center of attention. She typed carefully. Tell me what you're feeling. The reply came quickly. I'm happy for her, but you've never done something like that for me. And now all I hear is Ava and Grandma like we're some brand. I'm not part of it. Emma's chest ached. She pictured Emily's face, those guarded eyes that could flash to fire when hurt. Her fingers tapped slowly. I love you. That never changed. Emily's response was almost immediate. Don't erase me with generosity. Emma's eyes stung. She pressed the phone to her chest for a moment, breathing in before answering. I promise you, Emily, I will give you my attention, not just public gestures. You matter to me in ways that don't need an audience. There was no reply right away. The three dots blinked, disappeared, blinked again, then, okay. Emma sat there letting the weight of the exchange settle. She'd thought about the impact of her giving on Ava, but not how it might echo through the rest of the family. An hour later Ava texted, "Emily's with me, we're coming over." Emma stood when she heard the car outside. Ava walked in first, Emily just behind her, shoulders slightly hunched, hands in the pockets of her sweatshirt. They moved to the kitchen, where Emma poured 3 mugs of cocoa without asking if they wanted any. Emily wrapped her hands around hers, but didn't drink. Ava glanced between them. "How about," she said gently, "Grandma drives us home together, the 3 of us." Emily looked up at her sister, then at Emma and gave the smallest nod. They rode in comfortable silence at first. The hum of the road filled the car, broken only by the occasional streetlights sliding across their faces. Somewhere between town and Ava's street, Emily shifted in her seat. "You know," she said quietly, "I'm not good at saying things out loud, but I'm glad you listen." Emma glanced in the rearview mirror, catching Emily's reflection in the dim light. "I'll always listen," she said. When they pulled into the driveway, Ava hopped out first, but Emily lingered. She stepped closer to Emma, and for the first time in years, gave her a brief, fierce hug before following her sister inside. They walked into the house, 3 generations aligned at last. Emma turned toward her own car, a faint smile still on her face. But as she reached for the door handle, movement caught her eye at the curb. A white van, idled there, its side marked with the logo of the local news station. A camera was trained on her front porch. Emma finds a local news crew parked nearby filming the house. They wanted more drama. I offered closure. The white van's door slid open with a low clatter. A woman in a navy coat stepped out, press badge swinging on a lanyard. Behind her, a cameraman hefted a tripod from the van's interior. "Mrs. Whitman." The reporter's tone was warm but brisk, honed for doorsteps and deadlines. "We'd love a quick follow-up for the feature, something on what's next for the Whitman women." Emma hesitated at the foot of her step. Ava and Emily's silhouettes were still visible in the lit front window, their heads close together over mugs of cocoa. She could have said no. She almost did, but the last few weeks had been about opening doors, not closing them. She nodded once. "All right, but we do this together." Ava and Emily joined her on the porch a minute later, pulling on coats against the evening chill. The reporter's eyes flicked between them, clearly pleased with the symmetry of 3 generations in one frame. The first question came fast. "Miss Whitman, after the gala, after all the coverage, what's next?" Emma met the lens without flinching. "We're rebuilding on honesty, not checkbooks." The cameraman's light caught in Ava's hair as she spoke next. "My grandmother gave me worth quietly, then publicly. And it wasn't just about the scholarship, it was about someone saying, 'I see you,' when I thought I'd disappeared." Emily shifted beside them, hands deep in her pockets. She drew in a breath. "All of us matter, no hierarchy." Her voice was steady, not rehearsed, but it landed with the kind of truth that didn't need embellishment. From the sidewalk, Lorraine leaned on the fence post, a faint smile curling her mouth. She didn't step forward, didn't interrupt, just watched the sisters stand with a pride that wasn't borrowed from anyone else. The reporter glanced at her notes, then back to Emma. "And the rest of your family?" Emma thought of Eleanor's Zoom call, of old words finally meeting new air. "Some stories take longer to tell," she said simply. "We're still writing ours." When the camera stopped rolling, the reporter hesitated. "One more thing, off record if you like, but I think you should know." Emma tilted her head. "Since your gift went public, 5 alumni, people you've never met, have pledged matching donations. The university's confirmed a new endowment, and they're naming it after Ava." Ava's mouth opened, closed, then opened again. "What? It's official," the reporter said. "The Ava Whitman Scholarship Fund. For students who show resilience under pressure." For a moment, no one moved. The porch light buzzed faintly, a moth circling the glass. Emma glanced at her granddaughter, whose eyes had gone bright in the half-dark. Emily bumped her sister's arm lightly. "Guess you're on the wall for good now." The reporter thanked them, and packed up, the van pulling away with a rumble down the quiet street. The three of them stood there for another moment, breathing in the cool night. Inside, coats were hung, mugs refilled. Lorraine came in without knocking, as usual, and settled at the counter while the girls told her the news. She raised her glass of water like it was champagne. To second chances and first pages, she said. Later, after the laughter had softened and Ava and Emily had headed home, the house fell quiet again. Emma moved through the rooms slowly, touching the edges of picture frames, the backs of chairs, small grounding gestures. Her phone buzzed on the hall table. She picked it up, expecting another news alert or family group message. It was from the university. Would you speak at commencement next month? On stage, they called my name and I saw her by my side. The campus lawn shimmered under late spring sunlight, rows of white folding chairs fanning out from the stage like ripples in a pond. Banners in the university's deep blue hung from the light poles, snapping lightly in the breeze. Emma stood behind the curtain at stage left, her palms resting on the smooth wood of the podium. The president of the university was already speaking into the microphone, his voice rich and resonant over the loudspeaker. And now, he said, as we celebrate the achievements of our graduating class, we also honor those who make such achievements possible. Her cue was coming. Emma adjusted the fall of her jacket, feeling the faint tremor in her fingers. She wasn't here for herself. She kept reminding herself of that. She was here because Ava was crossing the stage today, and because the school had asked her to say a few words about the scholarship now bearing her granddaughter's name. From the edge of the curtain, she caught sight of the processional line, graduates in black gowns and tasseled caps waiting their turn. Ava stood among them, her head tilted slightly toward the breeze, sunlight catching the gold cords at her shoulders. Please welcome, the president's voice rang out. Our honored speaker and benefactor, Mrs. Emma Whitman. Applause rose like a wave. Emma stepped out into it, the light flooding her vision. She reached the podium and took in the view, rows of graduates, the stands filled with their families, the proud, restless energy of a day marking both an ending and a beginning. It is my joy, she began, to stand here not just as a donor, but as a grandmother. Her voice carried without strain, warm but steady. I am here because of one graduate in particular, someone whose determination turned obstacles into milestones. She glanced toward the line of students. Ava was watching her, eyes steady, mouth curved in a small knowing smile. Emma continued, today I have the honor of announcing the creation of the Ava Whitman Scholarship Fund, established for students who, like Ava, show resilience under pressure and the courage to keep going. There was another swell of applause, the kind that starts polite and builds into something genuine. Emma stepped back slightly, gesturing toward Ava. Would you join me? Ava walked to the stage, her gown swaying, tassel bobbing with each step. She came to stand beside her grandmother, and Emma felt the faint brush of her sleeve against her own, a subtle grounding touch. This, Emma said, turning slightly toward her, is what legacy looks like when it's shared. From the front row, Lorraine's hands came together in an unhurried, deliberate clap, her expression bright and damp-eyed all at once. Just beyond her, Emily waved from behind a cluster of blue and gold banners, her grin unguarded and proud. They didn't speak long. There were still hundreds of diplomas to award, but for that brief time, the spotlight belonged to both of them. Emma wasn't smiling for the cameras. She was smiling because the connection was real. When the president returned to the microphone, he announced, "And now our graduates." Emma stepped down from the podium, taking her seat at the side of the stage where she could watch each student cross. When Ava's name was called, she rose without thinking, joining the applause that seemed to roll through the entire lawn. Ava walked across the stage, with that same measured confidence Emma remembered from when she was a child, learning to ride a bike, steady, deliberate, unwilling to rush the moment. She shook the president's hand, took her diploma and turned to face the crowd. As she stepped down the stairs, Emma was there waiting. The hug they shared was uncalculated, unposed, arms tight, eyes closed, nothing performative in the way they held on. Somewhere behind them, the photographer's shutter clicked, but Emma didn't notice. She was listening to Ava's breath near her ear, the simple words, "We did it," spoken like a seal on everything they'd fought to reclaim. The sun slipped a little lower, casting long shadows across the lawn as the last names were called. When the final cheer went up, Ava reached into her gown pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "For you," she said quietly. Inside, nestled in pale satin, was a medal etched with both their names. The screen in the university's video feed would later fade out on that image. Ava's graduation stole, the medal resting against it. Emma Whitman and Ava Whitman engraved side by side. Legacy, love, belonging.